What are the most horrifying posts on Reddit? Who is creating this content, and why are they doing it? No one knows exactly what these anonymous people are trying to accomplish, but it is pretty clear that they want their voices heard. Number 5. The Intruder. In 2014, one person with the username Cinnapeters asked their fellow Reddit users to post about the most creepiest story they'd ever heard. Almost immediately, another member of the community responded to the post with an undeniably scary but true tale. The user, Pas Palamos, began by prefacing that the story was originally told by another Reddit account. Unfortunately, this Redditor had lost the link to the thread and was unable to find it again. The user described the experience of a child, one that was around 5 years old at the time. The kid was living with his mother in a small apartment since their parents had recently split up. Although the child did have their own room, they preferred to sleep in the mother's bed. There were only 3 residents in the apartment: the child, their mother, and a cat. In the middle of the night, while asleep in their mother's room, the child randomly woke up. They noticed something strange about their cat that was sitting patiently in the hallway. According to the original storyteller, this was out of character for their pet. "Our cat was a huge snuggler," they wrote, "and was typically always in bed with us." The pet finally stepped into the room and let out a single meow, proving to the child that something was wrong. Something was out there. The kid immediately turned to his mother and woke her up. The moment her sleepy eyes opened, she and her child saw a shadow in the bedroom across the hall. A person was walking out of the room and into the hallway. Her maternal instincts took over. The mother took her child into her arms and threw them out of the bedroom window. "I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly," they wrote. Fortunately, since their apartment was on the first floor, this was only about a 3-foot drop. Once her child was safely outside, she jumped out of the window and began screaming for her life. Eventually, someone in the neighborhood heard her and called the police for help. When the police arrived at the scene and investigated the apartment, they could not find any evidence that someone broke in. All they discovered was that the front door was unlocked, which was how the mystery man was able to make his exit before the officers could catch him. But the strange thing was, they wrote, "My mum swore up and down that she had locked the door that night with the deadbolt and chain lock." The story does not end there. A week after the incident occurred, the mother came across a few strange objects in the water heater closet. A notebook filled with names and drawings, gloves, and chewed up gum. This could only mean one thing. The intruder had been in their house all day and waited for the mother and her child to fall asleep. Number 4. The House in the Woods. In 2011, a Reddit user whose account has since been deleted posted about her childhood home. The house was located in the middle of the woods in a relatively secluded town. The area near her family's house, just across the river, was believed to once be home to an old witch. The witch's residence had since been cleaned, and the remains of her chimney were all that was left. It was a common place for hikers or travelers to explore, but many visitors could not stay very long. People often reported feeling dizzy and out of the ordinary. Some even winded up, the user wrote, completely disoriented and lost before stumbling back to the road. As a child, though, the Redditor did not think much of it. That was until they really started looking at what was going on. It started off with little things. Their dog did not want to take a walk after sunset. Gusts of wind would randomly pause. One of the trees on our property line suddenly died and lost all of its leaves in the span of 2 days during the middle of spring, they wrote. Soon, they started finding small corn dolls everywhere, both outside and inside of their house. They swear to have seen an old woman in a grey dress leaning over their father as he slept. They believe it was the ghost of the witch that once lived there. Number 3. Campers in Canada. In response to user Business Onion about the scariest experience that fellow campers had in their lifetime, a Reddit account named So It Always Goes in 2019 wrote about her and her husband returning from their trip to Texas from Alaska. The couple decided to take a scenic route on their drive back. According to her, the area was completely deserted. There are no campgrounds, she explained, parks, gas stations, hotels for hundreds of kilometers. So you just find a pullout and camp for the night. They came across a flagger who mentioned them to drive on the opposite side of the road since an active crime scene was being investigated. The couple assumed it was just a typical car crash and continued on their way. When they decided to pull over to the side of the road and rest for the night, they found themselves suddenly face to face with a police officer knocking at their window. It was 3 a.m, but the cop insisted on getting information. He asked if they had seen anyone walking around, like a hitchhiker. The couple shook their heads, claiming only to have noticed a few cars passing by. The cop warned them not to interact with any strangers who approached their car and to immediately call the police if someone came lurking around. Despite the fact that there was no cell phone service for over 50 miles, the couple agreed. The officer ended the conversation by assuring them that there was no public danger. Once they made it back home safely, they discovered the real reason why the cop had been asking so many questions. A pair of Canadian teenagers had recently murdered a couple around the same age as her and her husband. The crime scene they had passed earlier was also related to the teens. They had just killed an elderly man and set his truck on fire. Number 2. The Parents. In a post from user Rex Featherstone written in 2020, a young boy named Jeffrey revealed the day he finally found out the truth about his parents. After he and his family moved to Naperville, Illinois from Kentucky, he found himself attending the same high school that his very own parents went to during their adolescence. His parents decided to make the move after a man was murdered just a few blocks from their house in Kentucky. This was undeniably disconcerting, Jeffrey wrote. But so was the idea of moving away. It was completely absurd, which is exactly what I told my parents. However, the relocation was out of his control. Thankfully, as he began attending his new high school, all hope was not yet lost. He quickly befriended a boy named Rupert. Rupert seemed relatively harmless at first, until he asked a question no one had asked Jeffrey before. Have you ever looked into your parents? Rupert suggested that Jeffrey search his parents on Google. Although he was skeptical at first, Jeffrey ultimately thought it would be harmless. So, when he returned home from school, he took Rupert's advice. He soon found a link to an article about the murder of a teenage boy that happened years ago, back in 1987. The crime occurred in Jeffrey's hometown, Naperville, where his parents had grown up. As he read further, he discovered that his own parents had been investigated as suspects for the murder. They were the last people to have seen the boy, he wrote. But they were never prosecuted due to a lack of evidence. When the article Jeffrey read came to a close, the bottom of the page included a picture of the boy that had been murdered. The face looked oddly familiar, and that was when he realized the dead teenager looked exactly like Rupert. Number 1. The Whistler. Although this story is not of their own, Reddit user 0girl0 commented on a post made by Commander X, who was searching for the most disturbing Reddit post they could find. The Redditor told the tale that ended up making her an active Reddit user in the first place. After watching a YouTube video, the user came to Reddit to find more information about the story of a man who was constantly hearing strange whistling. The tune was always the same, and the man could remember hearing it throughout his childhood. He had no idea where or who it was coming from. Years later, when he traveled to a fireworks show in a nearby town for the 4th of July, the man once again heard the whistling. With his video camera, he was able to capture a clip of a stranger paddling on a small boat, whistling that tune this man had been hearing for years. He tried calling out to the mysterious paddler, but the person simply kept whistling the tune and paddling into the distance until they were out of reach. No one knows what happened to the man, or if the stranger is still following him. Will the whistler ever be caught? Will the witch in the woods be discovered? Will you click on one of the thumbnails on the screen to keep watching more dark and mysterious content from Insanity Collection? The mystery remains. Until next time, stay insane.